Hi everyone, let's have a chat about what we're going to be up to today. I like to use a combination of both flat pattern making and draping when I'm creating a new outfit for myself. So what I've done lately is I have been working on a duct tape dress form of myself. My duct tape form was made about a year ago, and right now she sits on top of a smaller form to make up for the majority of the form, and then I've stuffed the outer edge of it to make it a little bit squishy, and this way she has a nice stable base. However, since I've done my form, I've noticed that the last two things I've made draped on it fit me okay. I end up having to do a little bit of alteration in the shoulders mostly. When I did the dress form, I was standing with my shoulders really back because I was trying to stand upright for a long period of time. So now I've noticed that when I make something on this form, if I'm slouching at all, like in my natural position, so this is like my natural slouch, I end up having extra right up here. But what I've come to figure out is when I am in costume and I am posing for a photo, I tend to stand with my shoulders back and my chest out. So I've noticed that in the photos of my garments, I look like my garment doesn't fit correctly because I have stood like this, and then I end up getting pulls from my shoulders being back. So knowing this, when I am doing the drape for my Magpie costume, I know that I'm going to be draping it on my form, which is true to my standing back position, more so than it slouching on me. Because I have this dress form, I can drape directly on it. However, it is duct tape, so I can't pin directly into it. So what I end up doing is I end up making a basic drape of the garment that I want on this form, and then I will go in and change up seam lines and design elements in flat patterning. So in order for me to be able to do that, I need a correctly fitting sloper block or bodice block to work from. So what that looks like is this guy here. This is a front bodice block. This is a back bodice block. So what these are close fitting shells. This one is a single dart. You can also get them with a side dart here. But the idea is that this fits perfectly. So if you were to go in and make changes to this, you could sew it up and still expect it to fit. So this bodice block is dated from December 2018. It is now June 2020. So it's about time that I make a new set because my body does change quite a bit. If my waist gets a little bit bigger here and there, or my arms get larger or smaller, if my bust gets bigger, this now doesn't necessarily fit. So what I'm doing today is I am redraping a new front bodice block. For this time around though, I am making this specifically for a Victorian bodice. So I am doing this on top of Victorian corset that I've made for my Magpie costume and over top of the undergarment. This way, when I go to make my Magpie bodice, I will have an idea of how this should fit over these overgarments. Once I have this, I could make this bodice into any style of Victorian bodice that I would like. So I will show you guys how to do that at a video that is coming up for CocoVid. So my process for this is going to be taking some muslin. I'm going to mark my center front and center back lines on the muslin, and I'm going to drape the entire bodice before I go into doing any kind of flat patterning. And this is because I think I also have asymmetrical sloping shoulders. I think when I'm standing naturally, this shoulder is higher than this one. So having a symmetrical pattern doesn't help me. So I'm going to show you just how much of a difference that can be when I do this final video. So stay tuned, and if you like this video, click that subscribe button, hit the bell notification if you want to see more like this, and let's get on to it. First, I measured across the bust span. Then I marked a center front line parallel to the selvage edge, and then I drew a perpendicular line to that to stand in for the bust line. Then I pinned the fabric to the form and worked my way around the body, clipping the seam allowances at the neck, at the waist, and around the armhole so that the fabric would lay nice and flat. All right, so little update. I just took the drape off of the dress form. So far, it's looking like, it's looking much more symmetrical. My dart points are a little bit off. Let me just flip this around so you can see. So here, my dart on this side extended just a little bit far up, so I'm going to drop this down a little bit. And then it looks like my armholes are okay. It looks like my neckline's okay. My shoulder's okay. I did measure these so that when I was marking them, they're symmetrical, but we will see if they fit that way. We might end up with the back pieces being really asymmetrical once I go to drape this piece on here, but you know, that's why we're doing this process. So let's, next step is to true up all these lines. I'm gonna trim away all of the excess muslin so that I have seam allowances, and then I'll use this piece to pin to the back pieces for an initial test fit. Okay, so I have to slouch down a little bit to get to this, just so I can be in frame. So I have gone in and sewn the darts that I had marked on the original drape. I also stay stitched around all of the edges. So what that is I just went in with my sewing machine and I did a plain stitch right on the marked seam lines. And the reason why I did that is because it allows me to clip to my seam allowances and not be afraid of the shape distorting or stretching out. This is really important to do, especially if you're going to be wearing this mock-up for any length of time, and you know, pinning stuff and trying it on, because you really don't want the areas that are cut on the bias to stretch out of shape. So the shoulder seam, the neckline, and the armholes are going to be really important. For my particular design, you can see this was where the straight across was. So you can see this edge is cut on a pretty severe bias, so I did not want this panel to stretch out of shape either. So that's why I ended up stitching around everything, and it allows me to easily clip and fit things closer to the body. So one of the things you might notice right off the bat is how much better this side fits how much better this side fits versus this side. And part of the reason why this is the way that I've stuffed my form. You can sort of see, like, this side of the breasts are much more full right here. Some of the swell of my breast is here on this form, but it dips in a little bit here. So I'm not going to try to fit this hollow because I might not have that when I have the corset on. I know that when I'm wearing this corset, I do have a little bit of swell up here, and I want to make sure that I accommodate for that. So I'm going to ignore this bit of wrinkling and wait and see what it looks like while it's on me. So next step is to prep the fabric for the back piece, kind of the same way that I did for the front. Okay, real talk. I think I actually have found the issue of the problem. And that is my shoulders are in fact two different slopes, and one is noticeably larger in the back than the other. So my shoulder blades are different sizes. So I'm basing this on the fact that I did the shoulder slope equal on front and back. On the front panel, I did the shoulders the same, so they're the same distance from the center coming out. That does not happen and cannot happen on the back. So I'm going to turn this around so you can see just how big of a difference this is. So if you're looking at my shoulders, that is the straight line. Now if you drew a line straight across this way, that is not the same angle. And they're also, this is also a little bit wider on this side versus this side. Now, everything else about this is pretty even. Like the distance from across shoulder, like here and here is pretty close. This one looks a little bit bigger than this one. Again, I really think that my left side shoulder blade is bigger than my right side. So the only way to find out if that is the case is to sew this into a mock-up. All right, everyone, so the mock-up is done. I have to try it on. I ended up actually just sticking a separating zipper in the front of it and cutting it up the, the middle. You can kind of see what I did there. Good solution for a quick fix. Looking at the fit of it, the fit looks actually really good so far. So that again is with the sloping shoulders. So we shall see how this looks while it's on me. All right, so I'm just looking at the viewfinder right now to check this. Looks like my dart points are a little high. This might be a good point to include as my bust apex and then eventually just move the darts down a little bit. I'm not usually a fan of just leaving plain darts as they are in bodices. I usually go for a princess seam or a side dart. I don't really like the way that a single dart with my bust shape works, but it's fine for a sloper because I end up changing and moving that fullness somewhere else. So it looks like you can kind of see they get a little bit pointy right in here because they're just a little tall. Overall, the armhole looks pretty good. Now I do have like a lot of upper back roundness around my armhole, and you can see the way the arm is cut. It's covering a lot of that like full spill, and I think there's still just enough that if I wanted to put a sleeve in here, it would still be comfortable. My biggest thing was that the armhole covers up my little flab right here and my corset because my Magpie costume is sleeveless. So I want to make sure that I make that armhole cover up all of my icky bits. So looking at this, back might be a little bit iffy. We'll see. I'm going to put my hair up for a second so we can look at the shoulders. All right, look at this shoulder fit. You could see this has filled out quite a bit now because of my swelling of my bust. And when I'm standing with my shoulders back, as I usually like to when I'm posing, you could see I don't get, this is me slouching, and this is my high I'm posing kind of. Look, this was more like how I was standing in the, when I was making the duct tape form. So I'm gonna really like zoom in on this back end because I can't see this as well on my own. So I'm gonna actually watch this video later to help evaluate this. Okay, so I just pulled the muslin off after I went in and repinned that back shoulder line. You could see how much I ended up taking off on each side. They're still not quite even with each other. This side is definitely still a little bit longer than this side, but they're not, this neckline is not as long. So hopefully when I sew this back up, I'm gonna restitch this down. So this piece is gonna, this is the front, this piece is gonna just go to the original front stitching line. So I've just moved in that little distance. So I'm going to stitch these across and then we'll put the muslin back on and see if I like how it looks. All right, let's try this the second time. So I have adjusted the shoulders. We'll see if this looks any better. I'm looking for a nice smooth fit around the back neck since the Magpie dress is sleeveless, and I have an idea for like it has a collar up the back, so I want the back to fit nice and smooth. So this is the new fit. So this is me sort of slouching, standing normally, la-di-da-di-da. And then if I was posing, being all, oh, Look at me. Oh, beautiful bird. Okay, so what I've done is I've gone in, stitched just a little bit lower than my original line here, and I've clipped to it. My hope is that I had just a little bit of wrinkling like right up here, and I'm pretty sure that is from that neck being a little bit too high. So we'll see if that made any difference. Okay, so now see if that looks better. Now I do need that little bit of extra room to allow my shoulders to move, so as long as everything is laying nice and flat, if I was like just sitting with my hands down, all nice and pretty, or if I was posing, you know, want to get that nice smooth fit on the back neck. Once the drape was complete, I took it off of the form, ironed it flat, and then cut off the seam allowances right along the stitching lines. This way I could trace around the pattern onto regular paper. I made sure to include things like the bust line, the bust points, a grain line, and notches over on the armholes. When you fold this pattern right down the middle, it really shows you how asymmetrical my shoulders were set. So now if I was going to make a set of sleeves for this, I also have to make a right and left sleeve because the shape of the armhole is different on one side versus the other. So the way that I use these patterns is I will trace around them and then slash and spread the patterns, or do what's called the pivot technique to draw in new pattern shapes that I want to make for original designs. So I'm going to end this video here. Please stay tuned to CocoVid 2020 as I will have a video on Sunday explaining how to go from a sloper block like that to creating new designs and playing with added fullness. That's going to be it for me today. If you have any questions, please comment below. Give this channel a like and a subscribe if you want to see more, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.